At first I was BM, I was super strong. I knew that being in the meta I could not be wrong. But now to marksmanship I spec'd and all the DPS I tanked and I was strong. But still my heart was very wrong, so I will survive. I am survival. It's actually not that vital to be in the meta cycle. I'll keep my strong morality and have a personality. I will survive. I am survival. Go on now, go. Watch the video. You'll get your talents and rotation and join the Covenantal Nation. With your Lego heart you'll hit and on their faces you will sit. You'll survive. You are survival. Hey,
Before we dive deep in the video, remember to subscribe and enable those bell notifications thingy if you like the video. It helps the channel and us, and it helps you get our future videos in your feed, cause YouTube's. But enough about that. Remember that our guides focuses on the basics. You will get everything you need to start playing survival, but there is always room to improve. Transition! On the first row, Alpha Predator is your go-to for all scenarios. It offers more kill command resets that contribute to your focus generation. Currently, the spec is resource starved, gear starved, and damage starved, and well, you get the gist. Specifically, in AoE, you will find yourself in need of more and more focus, and if you target swap to spread the kill commands with Bloodseeker, more on that later, you will increase your DPS in AoE simply with the attack speed buff. Viper's Venom is a niche option that still sims close but works way better in the Birds of Prey build, which we do not recommend at this point, but there's a good chance it will outscale the standard one in single target. On the second row, go with Guerrilla Tactics. The build focuses on wildfire bombs, and that makes this talent a pretty clear-cut choice. It has the most output in single target and AoE on the row, and it complements the last talent really nicely. Not much to mention here aside from positioning when you fire the bombs, since they hit your target and enemies behind it in a cone-like fashion, so you ideally want to fire the bombs at the closest target so every other mob gets hit as well, in AoE at least. The third row is open for debate. We recommend Natural Mending. This lets your exhilaration come off cooldown a lot quicker, which is important for your sustain. There's a lot of mandatory damage in raids, and seeing as how everyone takes a lot longer to gear up, you'll have more issues surviving. Hence why more self-sustain is ideal. Same thing applies in Mythic Keystones. Shit can happen and you can get chunked instantly. Not to mention that once you get to push keys above 10, Pridefall will just deal a crap ton of damage to the whole group. Saving your healer to casts that can be redirected at someone else can make or break a pool. The other options have their niche, and it comes down to your judgment on what you pick. Moving down, only one option here as well, and that is the good old Bloodseeker. Again, we are talking here the best damage output on the row, since really that's why you are here. And on top of it all, survival can use all the damage you can get. Bloodseeker lets kill command apply a bleed on the target, giving you a 10% attack speed buff for every target that has a bleed on it. Plus, dot damage. Pair this up with Alpha Predator and you can spread the bleeds up nicely. Steel Trap is a worthy mention for the Birds of Prey build, but more on that later. The fifth row is yet another utility row that is free to be interpreted, more or less. We recommend Post Haste for general use. It gives you a small burst of speed once you land from your disengage. This can be timed in race to drop a puddle or some shit, and use the move speed buff to get back into the fight, or simply use both effects to get more distance, and obviously in dungeons as well. Binding Shot is good for dungeons specifically. The meta this expansion is heavy on the tank damage. No matter what tank you have in your group, if the key is high enough, he will either have to kite, hence this option coming in handy, or die. Born to be Wild is an all-rounder. It can be used in raids if it lets you time your turtle to immune mechanics, and of course it can also have that effect in dungeons, only that keys usually are a bit less organized, so it's hard to predict how much use you will get out of this talent. On the sixth row, surprise surprise, it's not Mongoose Bite, but Tip of the Spear. They actually seem very close to each other, with Mongoose for me having a slight DPS loss. Tip of the Spear makes your kill commands increase the damage of your next raptor strike. It adds a different dynamic to what you manage in your rotation. I can't say what I like more in terms of fun, but at least it's a different aspect of the rotation, and variety helps with boredom. Plus, we had Mongoose Bite for a good while, and chances are it will come back with more haste. Flanking Strike performs decent in Mythic dungeons and can be an AoE option. For now, if you want the best, Tip of the Spear is what you will pick. And lastly, still the best talent on the row is Wildfire Infusion. To be honest, it's the most interesting talent anyway. It coats your bombs with 3 effects that you get randomly on each subsequent charge. I say randomly, but you cannot get the same effect twice in a row. What does that mean? Well, your wildfire bombs will turn into any one of the 3, shrapnel, pheromone, and volatile bombs, at random. And when you use a charge, the next cast will be a different bomb. Shrapnel bomb debuffs the target so that when you Raptor Strike and Carve, you apply a small bleed on your targets that can stack up to 3 times. Pheromone bomb makes your kill commands against the target instantly reset, and volatile bombs deal 50% more damage on targets with Serpent Sting on them and also refreshes said sting. Each bomb essentially impacts your rotation in a different way, and maximizing their use is one of the fun aspects of survival. There's a point to be made about Birds of Prey. The talent in combination with Steel Trap, a specific legendary, and Soulbind can make for one of the best single target builds out there in raids on bosses like Shriek Wing and Sludge Fist, where you will have coordinated assault for pretty much every important phase where the boss is either targetable or has the damage increase debuff. It's very situational and only works for those fights, which is why we won't recommend it, but thought to mention it. If you are starting off with your survival journey, or simply are not that interested in min-maxing every little corner of your character's progression, aiming for eye level, aka agility, will be your first objective when choosing what gear to equip. After that, haste takes a major step in. Haste has always been the downfall and subsequently the savior of the spec. Because of how it is designed and how much synergy is between kill command procs, Raptor Strike buffs, not capping kill command charges, not capping focus, adding 3 systems of rotation alteration from the Wildfire Infusion talent, and so much more, haste is the logical solution to all of these issues. The survival rotation can get very busy, and it might come to a point where you would have to sacrifice one proc or charge of an ability for another. After haste, you want crit or verse in pretty much equal standing, with mastery as the worst secondary stat for you. These are all just reference points. Going for eye level and haste will definitely get your DPS out there, but if you really want to make sure you get everything you can out of your hunter, simming at raidboss.com or through any other reliable means will give you a better stat weight. All in all, secondary stats have had diminishing returns added in Shadowlands, and you might not even want to stack haste forever. There are 2 main enchants you want for your weapon, based on what content you pursue in clearing. Sinful Revelation will be your ideal single target enchant. It will give you the most amount of damage output versus raid bosses, while Celestial Guidance helps the most in all scenarios and has a universal application. For the chest, start with Eternal Skirmish and a heavy Desolate armor kit on top of it. Nothing too special. The armor kit though does add a bit of stamina, and we come back to what you heard in the talent section, where damage intake, even if not accidental, is still high enough to put pressure on your healer, and you want to mitigate that. For your boots, Eternal Agility is your only real choice, while your cloak has Fortified Leech, again for survivability purposes. Following your secondary stat priority, Quick Jewel Cluster and Tenet of Haste will be your options for sockets and ring enchants respectively. Although unlikely, these will be your most flexible consumables to change if something other than haste becomes your main secondary stat. Potion of Phantom Fire will give you the most amount of single target damage, while Potion of Spectral Agility excels better at AoE. The system changed in Shadowlands for potions, and with a 5-minute cooldown universally, regardless if you pop it in combat or not, you will end up using fewer potions, so maybe it's worth putting in the gold to get them. For the flask, there's only one real choice in the Spectral Flask of Power, since it rewards main stat. It will be the same for other classes and specs, just in case your hunter is your first tune in Shadowlands and you are used to the old style flasks. The new alchemical addition is the Weapon Oil, Shadowcore Oil for you. Adding this to the weapon not only boosts your damage in and of itself, but also synergizes with your Phantom Fire potion for slight damage boost on top of it all. It's a good option all around, but you can always go with Shaded Sharpening Stone and Weight Stone depending on the weapon type, since the output is similar to the oil, with the exception that the stones carry over to Mythic Plus scenarios as well. The Feast of Gluttonous Hedonism will always be your best overall choice, although a more expensive one by quite a bit. Feasts are usually worth getting for raids, where one feast can give up to 30 people a food buff. Otherwise, simply get the Tenebrous Crown aspect for the haste buff as a cheaper, yet still decent alternative. Right now, the best covenant for survival is Night Fate, which is great because it's the best for the other two specs, for which we have videos out already. Hey! This is the fruit of long years of shameless plugging. Or just plugging. Anyway, Wild Spirits is crazy good as far as covenant abilities go. It has tremendous AoE potential and also good output in single target as well. That aside, all three Soulbinds are valid for survival. Nia is the best for raiding and to start off with overall. She will always shine with more defensive options, assuming the mastery gains will affect you least out of most specs. Although when popping Wild Spirits, Grove Invigoration will still give you 16 stacks of the mastery buff, which still ends up in a massive amount of mastery gain. Dreamweaver is a good one to get for 2 quick potency and 2 endurance conduits, with Field of Blossoms giving you a whooping 12% haste eventually. However, the potency conduits for survival are subpar, and the overall traits are not as great for Dreamweaver to be justifiable as a good choice, seeing as catch-up lets you get your renown high, and now it's also pretty quickly so that other Soulbinds can be valid. Corraine has an awesome trait in Wild Hunt Tactics with a more movement speed based tree and eventually a second potency slot unlocked. However, what you really want is the first strike conduit that sacrifices a potency slot for an endurance one. The reason this is good is that in dungeons you will get the effect on every pack, and combining it with Wild Hunt Tactics and the crazy upfront burst damage that survival has will give you incredible throughput and should be your be-all end-all Mythic Plus build. Other than these, there are 2 potency conduits that shine the brightest, assuming you will go with Night Fate. One of them is Strength of the Pack, a flat damage boost that works really well with kill command resets. Spirit Attunement is your Wild Spirit buff, and the second best potency conduit you should aim to get. Finesse is usually up to your discretion since they don't impact your offensive power unless you go with Reversal of Fortune to get some focus back for successfully kicking a spell, and only impact your defensive power normally if you use them properly. Endurance though, Resilience of the Hunter and Marksman's Advantage will give you the most bang for your buck so far. A note to be made about Stinging Strike and Deadly Tandem, especially for the Birds of Prey build. On their own, they are pretty good and they can work better in pure single target. Although Deadly Tandem has output in AoE as well, but they shine in the Birds of Prey build. Trinkets are different in their effects, and depending on how you use them and what your luck and gear is like, some may be good, some not so much. Ideally, you want to sim your best trinkets if you are going to sim any piece of gear. There are a few standouts you can aim for though. Because of your stat weights, proclivities, Sinful Gladiator's Insignia of Alacrity will be one of the best choices, simply for the passive haste and agility buff, if you do PvP at least, which can be an easier way to get trinkets unless you are super lucky in PvE. Dreadfire Vessel is just raw damage, decent enough where it can just work as an extra ability you fire off. The fact that it's on a relatively short cooldown also helps. Stone Legion's Heraldry is a versatility factory, especially if there are more people in your group with it. Not only is Verse a good offensive stat, but it adds tankiness that you kind of need for a melee spec, with its only real defensive being an immunity that prevents you from attacking, so versatility. Other than these, Hateful Chain is one of the trinkets that a lot of people are using right now, maybe easier to get than farming the last and arguably hardest raid bosses in Athria. Or Inscrutable Quantum Device from the other side is something a lot of people farm, since that's where you will get one of your best legendaries anyway. Speaking of which, there are 3 legendaries you can opt for at the moment. The all-around best one for raids and dungeons, if you want to craft one that suits both, is Soulforge Embers. This is a pure AoE legendary that outputs decent single target as well. It takes a bit to incorporate its trigger effect into your rotation, but cheaper than making and upgrading 2 legendaries. Wildfire Cluster is the best for AoE and keys in general, but lacks a bit in single target behind the best one. This is also the one that drops from the other side. And for the best single target result, Rylak Stalker's Confounding Strikes will be your goal. Raptor Strike resetting the cooldown or charge of Wildfire Bombs works with the build that currently outputs the most amount of damage, both single target and AoE. There is a niche build with Nesting Wary's trapping apparatus, which also sees you pick the steel trap and birds of prey talent, and this makes up the best single target build if you are only fighting one target and one target only, and if you can stick to that target 100% of the time. This scenario is incredibly unlikely with one or two exceptions, and not enough to justify aiming for this build. You could though. I mean, after getting all the others, what else is there to do than eventually trying this legendary out as well? The opener is simple. Start with Serpent Sting and follow up with your Covenant ability. Pop Coordinated Assault, use Raptor Strike, use Kill Command, and then continue with the next best ability to press based on your single target priority. The priority, so not the order of the spells to be used, sees Serpent Sting at the top, a dot you want to maintain 100% of the time on your target. Keep Wild Spirits or any other Covenant ability on cooldown, followed by Coordinated Assault on cooldown as well. Use Kill Shot whenever available in execute phases. Wildfire Bomb next to prevent it from capping on charges and with some specific usage based on what bombs you have. More on that in a second. Next, you want to keep Kill Command from reaching 2 charges. Fill in with Raptor Strike as your focus spender. Keeping the above priority in mind, you want to change your mindset a bit based on what bomb is available to cast, as long as you are still not altering your priority when it comes to the other abilities and, capping resources. Pheromone Bomb should be used after you have emptied your focus bar as much as possible, so you can fit the next few globals, hopefully at least 3, with Kill Command. Shrapnel Bomb works the other way around. You want to cast it at 60 or more focus so you can dump the focus on Raptor Strikes, 3 ideally, to apply the stacking internal bleeding effect from the bomb. And lastly, Volatile Bomb should be used when Serpent Sting is close to expiring. Using it this way will deal more damage and prevent you from having to manually reapply Serpent Sting. Your AoE rotation, assuming you are in a mythic keystone dungeon and approaching a big and/or dangerous pack, starts with Coordinated Assault and Wild Spirits. Cast Wildfire Bomb, Carve, and Kill Command. You want to always use Carve on cooldown to reduce the cooldown of Wildfire Bomb, which you also want to never have it cap on charges. Kill Command should also be used before reaching 2 charges since AoE is more focus heavy in terms of resource cost. Keep Serpent Sting up on as many targets as possible, especially if your next bomb will be Volatile Bomb, the green one, which can maximize the AoE burst potential you have. There are a few more nuances for Survival. A lot more actually, since Survival is not a particularly easy spec to pull off properly. If you want to dive deeper into the spec, check the Discord community, Trushad Lodge. You will find the best hunters in the world there that can answer any questions you have and help you raise your skill to the next level. One such being ThyMind, which we are super thankful for checking our guide and making sure that all the information we have is up to date and, we properly inform you thusly. ThyMind is one of the best survivals in the world, and you can find ThyMind in the Trushad Lodge Discord. That and the online written guides on both Icy Veins and Wowhead can offer you a lot more details to get you pumping as much as Survival is able to pump at the moment. Thank you to our patrons for supporting the channel. We are super humble for having this much love from you guys, and that's what pushes us to keep pumping better and better stuff. And if you're the viewer like the video, find it helpful, you can also check the Patreon link down below. It's not required, but it does help out. Maybe you can find something that you like, maybe a goodie or two. You can also catch us stream on twitch.tv/MarcelianOnline, where we play Survival and other specs for videos that we use on YouTube. Thank you for watching the video. See you next time.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classical retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.